At the heart of the world's great religions, there are mysteries which require a leap of faith. The symbols of religion, its statues, icons, and rituals, are the outward expression of that faith. And in themselves, they generate devotion among the faithful. Although we live in a world dominated by seemingly miraculous technologies, the Middle Ages are, for many, only a step away. The relics of saints are still venerated and credited with healing powers. For many millions, the age of miracles is not yet past. They crave signs and wonders. The physical proof of the existence of the God they worship is a vital factor in their daily lives. The cult of the Virgin Mary is a powerful force in the faith of many Roman Catholics. Since the Middle Ages, it has been linked with the phenomenon of weeping Madonnas, statues which shed blood or tears. To skeptics, these incidents provide evidence of the survival into the scientific age of primitive and superstitious beliefs. But there is evidence that such things do happen. The case of the weeping Madonnas continues to inspire the faithful and perplex the curious to this day. There is more to this than meets the eye. In the 1950s, an Italian physician, Dr. Piero Casoli, made a detailed investigation of weeping Madonnas. He had his work cut out, concluding that at least 2 such incidents were reported every week in Italy alone. West Wicklow, in the green heart of rural Ireland. In 1995, there was a remarkable happening in the sleepy village of Grangecon. A statue of the Virgin Mary, owned by Mary Murray, began to weep blood-red tears. Mary's daughter, Attracta O'Hara, takes up the story.
Well, it was a Monday morning. It was a beautiful day. The sky was real blue. And I came down here and I decided to clean up the kitchen here for my mother because I don't live here. The kitchen was upside down. And I passed the window and I looked in at the statue and I just said, oh, what happened to Our Lady's face? And I left down the sack of rubbish that I had and I came back and I looked at it again. And I looked at it again, I said, is this for real now or am I imagining it?
So I come in, she handed me the statue and in the box as it was, and I took the box in my hand. And there it was, a red down one side, 2 eyes of bloodshed, and there was water or some liquid running down the other side of the face.
Grangecon became a place of pilgrimage. the faithful and the curious came to inspect Mary Murray's statue. Mary became a mini celebrity. The statue continued to shed tears. However, the local priest, Father Gary Doyle, remained sceptical, since the manufacturers could provide a rational explanation for the tears.
The eyes of the statue are kept in place by an adhesive substance, and they state that in certain temperatures this adhesive substance may melt or liquefy and cause the symptoms that are visible on the statue in Grange Con. And that's, for me, a reasonable explanation, possible explanation.
Nevertheless, Mary Murray and the faithful remain firmly convinced that a little miracle has happened in Grange Con. A world away in the streets of Chicago, the power of faith seems just as strong. The pace of life is light years quicker here than in Grange Con, but it can be slowed temporarily to the speed of a tear trickling down the cheek of a plaster statue of the Virgin Mary. In the 1980s, the congregation of this Roman Catholic church in Chicago maintained that a statue of the Virgin Mary was weeping at regular intervals. Few could doubt their sincerity. And as the statue itself was an object of worship, the mysterious appearance of liquids on it was interpreted in a religious context, although no one could be sure of its precise meaning. Some suggested that the tears flowed in response to powerful images of devotion focused collectively by the congregation. Doubters dismissed the tears as condensation. However, in contrast to such alarming psychic manifestations as poltergeist activity, the tears on the face of the Madonna seem to restore rather than terrify. The Weeping Madonna had become not only a tourist attraction, but also a focus of prayer and devotion for those who came to see her. Whether the phenomenon is real or imagined, it stirs real emotions. On the other side of Chicago, in an Orthodox church, an icon of the Virgin Mary was also shedding tears. The idea of a weeping Mary is derived from the image of her at the foot of the cross at the moment when her own sorrow at the death of her Son symbolizes the sorrow of the human race for the death of Christ. Her tears also stand as a symbol of mediation, for what son can refuse the tears of a mother? A shrine was built around the icon while worshippers satisfied themselves that the tears continued to flow. In the early 1950s, scientists analyzed the tears shed by the celebrated Weeping Madonna of Syracuse. They noted the presence of sodium and chlorine, which are constituents of human tears, but they found no traces of the substances of which the image had been made. In Syracuse, a vast new basilica has risen to house the miraculous object. In comparison, the shrine at the Church of St. Nicholas is a humble affair, but it provokes the same reactions in the faithful as they gaze on the face of the Virgin, a sense of expectation and wonder, and a feeling of an experience shared. St. Jerome once observed that tears torment the devil more than do the pains of hell. In 1996, in Clearwater, Florida, thousands flocked to see a vision of the Virgin Mary which appeared on the tinted windows of an office building. It possessed the outline of a hooded robe and stirred some to trance-like devotions. Others, less convinced, claimed that the image was caused by the reflections thrown off by sprinkler water. The crowds which massed outside the building threatened to bring traffic to a halt. A trick of the light, or evidence of God's presence in the world? 4 years earlier, the police in Marlborough, New Jersey, had grappled with a similar influx when 6,000 people arrived hoping to catch a glimpse of the Virgin Mary. The pilgrimage was prompted by Joseph Januszkiewicz, who claimed that the Virgin Mary had appeared to him in the back garden of his home. The pilgrims gathered before the shrine which Januszkiewicz had erected to the vision, but those hoping to witness the Virgin's return were in for a disappointment. Many vowed to come back, although the price of devotion was a $5 parking fee near the site where the Virgin Mary had appeared. In Jordan, in 1978, thousands of Christians descended on the small town of Madaba, 21 miles south of Amman. Their destination was a Greek Orthodox church, already famous for its ancient mosaic map of the Holy Land in the 6th century. Now the crowds jostled for a glimpse of a miraculous icon of the Virgin Mary which had been suffused with light and had grown a third arm. Local residents claimed that sick people anointed in the church had experienced remarkable recoveries. Was this the work of the icon and its mysterious additional arm? Miracles are not confined to the Christian faith. In September 1995, Hindus across the world were gripped by the fastest-spreading religious rumor in history. It had started in India, but quickly reached Britain, where there is a large Hindu community. The Vishwa Temple in Southall, a suburb of London, became the focus of media attention as thousands of Hindus flocked to witness the spoon-feeding of the god Ganesh with milk. What seemed to be miraculous was that the temple statues were actually absorbing the milk.
I had observed it, I had experienced it myself. And by being the first, probably in the whole of England, I feel Lord Shiva has chosen me.
The statues of Hindu gods are ritually fed every day. At this time of year, milk is offered for the souls of ancestors, but the consumption of the milk by the statues was an unprecedented phenomenon. In Southall, the local supermarket sold out its entire stock of nearly 30,000 pints of milk in a single day. Aided in part by the internet, the Ganesh phenomenon raced through Asia and the Far East.
I did it out of curiosity and out of respect. And since it happened, I believed it with my own eyes. Otherwise, I would not have.
Some suggested that the real cause of the milk drinking was capillary action, a kind of weeping Madonna process in reverse. Substances like alabaster and sandstone can absorb liquids quite fast, but many of the milk-drinking statues were tiny or made of metal. Capillary action cannot account for the litres of milk they are said to have consumed. At the height of the Hindu milk-drinking frenzy, it was claimed that a statue of the Blessed Virgin in the English town of Runcorn was performing the same feat. In Italy, a more traditional manifestation was that of the weeping Madonna of Civitavecchia, said to have shed tears of blood. The statue, which had become an object of veneration, was eventually removed for scientific examination. Its return was eagerly awaited. A cavalcade of cars, led by the Bishop of Civitavecchia, sped up to the cheers of the crowd. The statue of the Virgin was held aloft. And the scientists' verdict? The blood was human, but its origin unknown. The vexed question of origin hangs like a thundercloud over the greatest religious mystery of all, the Turin Shroud. Is this the face of Jesus Christ, imprinted on the shroud in which he was wrapped after he was taken down from the cross? The shroud is a 14-foot piece of linen, showing a full-sized back and front image of a crucified man. The image bears evidence of scourging wounds, a crown of thorns, and the signs of crucifixion. But 1,300 years lie between the crucifixion and the first recorded appearance of the shroud in 1357, near Troyes in France. It quickly gained an early reputation as an ingenious fake. In 1389, the Bishop of Troyes, one Pierre d'Assy, sent a report to Pope Clement VII, in which he claimed to know the artist who had painted the image. The shroud's first known owner was a minor nobleman, Geoffrey de Charnay. In 1450, the de Charnays sold the shroud on to the Duke of Savoy, and in 1578 it was lodged behind bars in Turin Cathedral. The shroud's negative image was only revealed when it was photographed for the first time in 1898. Since then, the shroud has revealed itself, bit by bit, with each advance in the technology applied to investigating it. In 1978, an American scientific team was allowed to subject the shroud to close scrutiny. Infrared, X-rays, and ultraviolet light probed its secrets. Sticky tape removed the tiniest of fabric samples for chemical analysis. But after 4 years studying the shroud, the scientists remained divided.
I think there was a body shape under the shroud when the image was formed.
I am certain that the shroud was painted during the Middle Ages by an artist.
No way whatsoever is this what could be termed a painting.
If it's supposed to have been made by the hand of man, the scientific evidence is overwhelmingly against it.
The story of the shroud is full of paradoxes, and in recent years there have been ingenious experiments to determine how the image might have been transferred from a human body to the linen cloth. One such took place under the walls of the old city of Jerusalem. The driving force behind the experiment was Sister Damien, a Carmelite nun and qualified archaeologist who lives in Salt Lake City.
And my novice mistress came in and started looking at the photos with me. And she mentioned that he must have, the person whose image is on the shroud, must have had a terrible fever. And the minute she said that, it all started to fall together.
Sister Damien consulted a local undertaker, Michael O'Donnell. Could bodies heat up rather than cool after death?
Is the fact that cellular death occurs later and that the cells are still active. And however, the metabolic processes of naturally cooling the body have ceased, and a body can reach a temperature of up to 110 degrees Fahrenheit.
Combined with the heat exhaustion brought on by crucifixion, which also raises the body temperature, this might have scorched an image onto the shroud. With the help of a colleague, Dr. Jim Strange, Sister Damien decided to test her theory in a limestone tomb in Jerusalem. A medical mannequin stood in for the body of Christ. First, Dr. Strange sprayed it with an acid sweat solution. Then he and his wife Caroline filled the mannequin with warm water, bringing it to a temperature of 117 degrees Fahrenheit, which simulated the effects of a post-mortem fever. The wrists and ankles were tied in the position shown on the shroud. After a final spraying with a mixture of blood, myrrh and aloes, traces of all of which have been found on the Turin shroud, the mannequin was taken to the tomb. Here, Dr. Strange wrapped it in a shroud and left it for 24 hours.
We're looking at the results of the experiment. This is number 4. This is our last shroud. What we're looking at is a human body from the shoulders down to the feet. The image is formed exactly like the image on the shroud. That is, it's formed by dehydration of the fibers themselves.
Inconclusive, perhaps, but the experiment did produce an image which chemically matched the Turin shroud. But could carbon dating pinpoint the age of the shroud?
I would feel quite confident that the carbon date would show that the shroud was created in about 1350.
If the carbon date were to turn out to be in the Middle Ages, it would be, in my opinion, and those of most of my colleagues, a much more remarkable miracle than if it were that of the resurrection.
Well, if it turned out to be a date other than the 1st century, I'd hate to be in a position to work out what it really is.
In 1988, scientists who carbon-dated fragments of the shroud at 3 separate institutions in Switzerland, Britain, and the United States concluded that the shroud was no more than 550 years old. It had been made in the mid-14th century, which, coincidentally, was when it was first heard of. The believers hit back, claiming that the fragments of the shroud which had been carbon-dated were bits of its medieval patching. Others argued that the image may have been transferred in Christ's tomb by some radiation flash, which would have made any attempt to carbon date the shroud pointless. But in 1988, the Vatican's Cardinal Anastasio Balestrero announced that there was a 95% certainty that the shroud dated from the 14th century. One of the most plausible theories was that the shroud had been painted. If so, how was it done? In a modern experiment, artist Susan Hilton painted a similar piece of cloth with a medieval mixture of alum and a pigment made of Brazil wood. She painted an image in negative, just like the one on the shroud. This was then aged. Finally, the cloth was washed, as it had been in the 15th century, to test its authenticity. The result was an image hauntingly reminiscent of the Shroud Man. The photographs of the shroud taken at the end of the 19th century had revealed for the first time that the image on the cloth was in negative. But could the image itself have been a medieval photograph? South African art historian Dr. Nick Allen.
For example, they had light-sensitive chemicals like silver sulfate and silver nitrate. Also, lenses were available. The Venetians, for example, made spectacle lenses in 1275.
In his garden, Dr. Allen used a window to project a point of light into a darkened room to make an image of a plaster figure using only medieval materials to reflect maximum light. 4 days of sunlight produced an upside-down image scorched onto a linen cloth. Like Susan Holt's painting, it presents a negative image. Reversed, it becomes a primitive photograph. These are only 2 of the many possible explanations, but the shroud itself has not yet yielded all its secrets. The question remains, if the shroud is medieval and the image is neither photographic nor painted, could a human model have been used to fake the image of Christ? Had the forger used a horribly tortured human guinea pig? To the believers in miracles, scientific proof or disproof is ultimately of no relevance. Faith is not the product of rational argument. The reflections in an office building window can become evidence of God's presence in the world. But perhaps the last word on religious mysteries should go to Father Gary Doyle, the priest in Grangecon. Father Doyle, who also helps to run a home for young people with learning difficulties, prefers to see the evidence of God in people, rather than in the tears running down the face of a plaster statue of the Virgin Mary. But the yearning of millions for signs and wonders is as strong as ever. As we move into the 21st century, there is no slackening in the reports of miraculous events. Perhaps we do still live in an age of miracles.